I don't know if you caught the news. James Comey, former FBI director, is now under indictment for threatening the president of the United States. I call that a very good start.
These MAGA media stars are now cheering on censorship and violating the First Amendment. Guys, we're going to talk about some of the major media figures on the right, which of course branded itself for a very long time around being the pro-free speech, pro-First Amendment, pro-open discourse and debate side of the aisle, which is part of why I aligned myself with it for years. But now that President Trump and Republicans are in power, and President Trump is, or at least his administration is really cracking down on free speech in a number of ways, some pretty notable figures in conservative media who, out of one side of their mouth, say, or at least have in the past, that they don't support cancel culture, they do support free speech and the First Amendment, are suddenly clapping like seals at a prosecution that appears to me to be an absolutely ridiculous overreach and a blatant attack on the First Amendment, referring, of course, to the most recent indictment against former FBI Director James Comey. Across the spectrum, legal analysts are saying this is a ridiculous case where they are suggesting that he threatened the president and actually violated federal statutes that refer to an intent to do harm, kidnap, or kill a president by posting an image of seashells that spelled out 8647, 86 being slang for remove, get rid of, or in some cases, some people will interpret it to mean kill, and then 47 being 47, the 47th president. Well, now our very super duper pro free speech friends in right wing media like Matt Walsh and Michael Knowles are cheering on this prosecution that is attempting to imprison somebody for whether you like it or not. And don't get me wrong, I think James Comey is ridiculous person. I have no love lost for him as an individual. Is First Amendment protected speech, is not an explicit threat of any kind, and the entire case is just making the Trump administration and the Department of Justice look like an absolute joke. But because it's about owning the libs, Matt Walsh and Michael Knowles are apparently big fans. Listen to this clip of them speaking about it at a Turning Point event this week.
One person, I'm very sorry, is not here tonight. James Comey. I'm really sorry. I don't know if you caught the news. James Comey, former FBI director, is now under indictment for threatening the president of the United States. I call that a very good start. I want Hassan Piker arrested. I want all of the elected officials, the Democrats, the media figures who have called for violence against conservatives, I want them to be prosecuted. I want them to know that will not stand in America. We've got a great start with this administration, and we need a lot more of it. Anybody you want to arrest?
Ditto to all that. That's all I got for tonight.
That clip's genuinely sickening to me because the mask is off with these people who masqueraded, less so in Michael Knowles' case. He's always been pretty open about his authoritarian views. But this Turning Point audience, Turning Point as an organization, Matt Walsh, the Daily Wire, said for years they cared about free speech and the First Amendment and all this stuff. It was bull. It was a lie. Now, the second they're in power, they are cheering on the political persecution in a farcical indictment against James Comey based on First Amendment protected expression, trying to lock him up as if he threatened to personally kill the president. Because, of course, I agree that people who actually engage in true threats to kill the president or the vice president or someone like that, that is a crime and it should be a crime and it should be policed and enforced. But that is not what James Comey did. And in fact, what makes this so insanely ironic and hypocritical is that this is a Turning Point USA event. And Jack Posobiec, who's associated with Turning Point USA, tweeted himself when Biden was president, 8646. Is he going to be prosecuted? After all, if that's actually a threat, now in reality it's not. So neither Jack nor Comey should be prosecuted. But they seem to want to have one standard for their enemies and just totally different standard for their friends that are doing it. It is genuinely mind-boggling levels of tribalism and partisan hypocrisy and extremism. And to me, it really betrays just so much of the rot at the soul and heart of the conservative media ecosystem right now. Other than that, they're doing amazing. Watch this, guys. I dropped my latest 30-minute debate into today's sponsor, RecaClip, and I picked vertical dimensions for shorts and reels, added a custom prompt for the kind of moments I wanted, and their proprietary AI instantly found the most viral highlights. It auto-captions everything perfectly and delivers scroll-stopping clips in minutes with really no manual editing required. So instead of your long-form content sitting unwatched, you can repurpose it fast and start posting it across social media. It's the fastest path from raw footage to viral clips, and here's what also makes it different. RecaClip is the world's only AI tool that also clips YouTube and Twitch live streams in real time. While the stream is still happening, you don't have to wait for the bot. All of that for just $6.99 a month, and you can cancel anytime. So if you've got debates or podcasts or old long-form content collecting dust, this really is a game changer. Go sign up at the link in the description of the pinned comment, which is https://creator.reca.ai/ right now and start clipping smarter. Tag at RecaClip when you post your clips. Anyway, thanks to RecaClip for sponsoring, and let's get back to today's show. So we're going to get into more of the details here. Here is a Fox News clip that clarifies exactly what is happening in terms of the indictment handed down. Then I'm going to read you a brief snippet of the indictment that I found to be really delightful. Listen to this reporting from Fox News, whose own legal analysts, the conservative media network, are already saying this indictment is totally BS. But obviously it doesn't matter to Michael Knowles and Matt Walsh and their ilk. They just, if it owns the libs, it's good. Constitution, law, seriousness, those things are irrelevant. Own the libs, good. Not owning the libs, bad. That's the extent of their analysis. They are trolls who wear ties and have nice cameras. Anyway, here is that Fox News clip.
Former FBI Director James Comey for a second time. Justice correspondent David Spunt's got the story. He's here in Washington. Hey, David, they're going to go at it again.
John, they're going at it again, not even a year after they went at it after the first time. We're told this via several law enforcement sources. We're told this is related to an Instagram post from the former FBI director last year when he posted on the beach. You may remember there was a formation of shells that said 8647 that were in that pairing of 8647, and he said something along the lines of, isn't this a curious formation that I just found while walking on the beach? Well, critics to that post immediately pointed out that 86, at least in the restaurant world, means to get rid of or to kill something from a menu, 47 meaning the 47th president of the United States. So Comey did speak with the Secret Service, did speak with federal investigators. At the time he was interviewed last spring or early last summer, shortly after that happened. No charges were ever filed, but now it appears that he has been indicted today. We're working to learn more about the indictment. We're waiting to see if officials have anything to say on this. That is the post that you see right there, cool shell formation on my beach walk, from former director James Comey. Now, you also remember that he was indicted last year as well for allegedly lying to Congress in some testimony that he gave. That was actually thrown out by a judge. A neutral third-party judge had to get involved and ruled that Lindsay Halligan, the Trump-appointed interim U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia, could not lawfully serve, was not lawfully serving in that role because she was not Senate confirmed. So his case got thrown out. Letitia James, the U.S. or the Attorney General, in the state of New York, her case was thrown out related to alleged mortgage fraud, also in the Eastern District of Virginia because of the Lindsay Halligan issue. But it appears that DOJ has gone back for a second crack. It appears that, and they have gotten an indictment, and this comes under the leadership of Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, who's been on the job in that position since former Attorney General Pam Bondi was fired several weeks ago. So certainly An update that maybe we weren't expecting today, but the former FBI Director James Comey indicted for a second time. This has been this is related, I should say, to that shell formation 8647. And I will just end on this if you have any questions. This is done by a jury of his peers, a grand jury of his peers, that they believe they had enough evidence to go forward with an indictment, which I think is an important point.
Yeah, so that's an interesting coverage there from Fox News. I'll say on that last point, yes, an indictment was handed down by a grand jury, but the way that a grand jury works is that only the prosecution gets to present evidence. There's no defense or counter arguments or context, and the bar is very low, and grand juries almost always approve the indictment in a federal prosecution like this. It's extremely unusual that they don't. And so I wouldn't read too much into the fact that they approved an indictment in this case. And instead, I would focus on the fact that I believe this will be, if not dismissed by a judge, laughed out of court and will fall apart eventually, and is being done purely to try to satisfy or suck up to President Trump. Because listen, whether you like what he said or not, and I do believe we should all be more careful with our words and with our rhetoric, and in this current context of such rising political violence. And I apply that to anti-Trump operatives and the president as well, who, of course, is very extreme in his rhetoric and very hateful and very, wild, some of the things he posts on Truth Social. But whether you like it or not, saying 86 something is not a threat to kill someone, right? It is a common term that is used to remove or kick out or get rid of it. And that is the most obvious and logical explanation for what James Comey meant here. And even if deep down on the inside, James Comey did does want Trump killed or something, that would be horrible. But his actual post doesn't say that and isn't a meaningful threat. So I want to read you a couple other posts. Former Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz tweeted in February of 2024, "We've now 86th McCarthy, McDaniel, McConnell." And he's referring to 3 Republicans who've been retiring or otherwise ushered out of office. And then he says, better days are ahead for the Republican Party. So there you go. You have like a pretty clear example of how this is used in a political context to refer to kicking people to the curb politically, not literally killing them. And while I understand that sometimes it could be used like that, there is a clear and obvious meaning here. This is First Amendment protected expression. It is not a direct threat, and they know that. That's why Pam Bondi, while she was Attorney General, refused to bring this case, this indictment against James Comey, and move forward with it. This has been on ice for a long time because it's a joke of a case. And even conservative legal analysts, and both of Fox News's most prominent legal analysts, are saying so. We're going to come to that. But first, I'll just also highlight this post for you that I already mentioned. Jack Posobiec, the right-wing commentator, in 2022, when Biden was president, tweeted 86-46. So, are they going to indict him? I'll wait. If they actually think that saying 86 someone is a threat to assassinate a president, then Jack Posobiec did the same crime. And there is literally you can say, well, there's different context. Okay, context doesn't change whether a statement is illegal or not, right? You can't prosecute somebody for the subtext of what you think was going on in their head. Either the statement is a threat or it isn't. And I'm of the belief that does not meet the legal threshold of a threat, which is a very high bar in either case. So I don't want either of them prosecuted for such a thing. But you cannot and pretend to be doing anything other than engaged in a partisan witch hunt, like just naked political retribution. Go after one but not the other. For your enemies, you think it's a threat and you want to send them to jail for years under statutes for people who threaten to assassinate or kidnap the president. But then for your friends, oh, no big deal. It means something different when our friends say it. Like, that's literally not how morality, logic, or law or principles work. That is how a kangaroo court system would work in a banana republic. Now, thankfully, we don't live in a banana republic, so this case will fall apart because our criminal justice system is serious, but it's still chilling and deeply, deeply embarrassing and humiliating for the Department of Justice that they're even bringing this case in the first place. I mean, I want to read you from the indictment here. This is a quote. On or about May 15th, 2025, in the Eastern District of North Carolina, the defendant, James Bryan Comey Jr., did knowingly and willfully make a threat to take the life of and to inflict bodily harm upon the President of the United States, in that he publicly posted a photograph on the internet social media site Instagram, which depicted seashells arranged in a pattern making out 8647, which a reasonable recipient who is familiar with the circumstances would interpret as a serious expression of an intent to do harm to the President of the United States. That might be the most ridiculous and absurd sentence to ever appear in a document filed by the Department of Justice. What are we talking about? Does anyone actually believe that when James Comey posted an image of seashells in the shape of 8647, that was him signaling his intent to inflict bodily harm on the President of the United States? I don't think you could find a serious person, a single person, to swear on the Bible, look into the camera and say, yes, I believe that was James Comey, former FBI director, announcing his intention to try to kill the President of the United States. Does anyone actually think that? Let alone a reasonable person, because a reasonable recipient, this is what they say in their own indictment, must interpret that as a serious expression of an intent to do harm to the President of the United States. So they are arguing that that was him announcing to the world he was going to try to physically, personally harm Trump. It just obviously wasn't. I mean, may we consult the dictionary? Usually it's progressives and leftists who I feel like are waging war on the dictionary, but in this case, it's the Trump administration and it's media sycophants like Michael Knowles and Matt Walsh. Here is Merriam-Webster, the dictionary, the definition they have for 86. 86 is slang, meaning, quote, to throw out, to get rid of, or to refuse service to. It comes from 1930s soda counter slang, meaning an item was sold out. There's varying anecdotal evidence about why the term 86 was used, but the most common theory is that it is rhyming slang for nicks. So, let's be extremely clear about this. Anybody who's worked in the service industry knows that this is a phrase commonly used to say get rid of something or remove it. And in the context of President Trump, that could mean impeachment, most likely. It could mean prosecution. It could mean him resigning. It, I guess, could mean someone killing him. But it certainly, this statement alone does not call for people to kill him. And it certainly, as the indictment claims, does not suggest an intent to do so personally. That's what they're going with. That's what they're arguing. And it's just laughable. It's just so unserious. Even conservative legal analysts think this is ridiculous. So here's the headline from Mediaite. Fox News legal analyst shreds Trump DOJ's absurd Comey prosecution. And this is Andy McCarthy, the National Review writer, former federal prosecutor and Fox News contributor. He says, quote, after uproar generated by the administration, Comey took down the post and publicly asserted that he opposes violence and meant no such suggestion. He also voluntarily submitted to interviews with the Secret Service, which proceeded to drop what never should have been a criminal investigation. I'll get back to his quotes in one sec, but I want to actually discuss that because I've seen some people use the fact that Comey immediately took down the post and said he opposes violence as some kind of admission of guilt. But I think it's more so that if I posted something that was misinterpreted as calling for violence, I would take it down because I don't want to call for violence. So it's that's the natural thing to do if you weren't calling for violence. And the ironic part about this is something tells me these same people, if he hadn't taken down the post, would be using that as proof that he did mean to threaten the president, because even after it was pointed out with him, he kept it up. So it's he can't win, and to me, neither really proves or disproves the case. Anyway, back to Andy McCarthy here. There was not a threat of violence against the president, much less an unambiguous call for his assassination, nor would it be remotely possible on the known evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Comey intended violence. What Comey did, therefore, does not come close to a threat to kill or harm the president, criminalized by Section 871 of the Federal Penal Code, much less to solicitation of a violent crime like incitement. This farce, then, is nothing more than a continuation of Trump's lawfare campaign against a political enemy. It is inconceivable that Comey could be convicted of a crime in these circumstances, but the president's minions are putting him through the anxiety, expense, and stigma of the judicial process. This includes Acting Attorney General Todd Blank, who is under pressure to prosecute Trump's enemies and hopes to have the acting designation removed from his title. So there you have an extremely conservative legal analyst employed by Fox News saying this is a farce, saying this is lawfare, which it is. It is a attempted witch hunt, a political persecution against Trump's enemies, and that is wrong. That is a total perversion of the American system of justice, and it is an attack on the First Amendment. And now some people would try to justify this by saying, well, they prosecuted Trump unfairly, right? They engaged in lawfare against President Trump, so he's just doing it in return. And I would actually argue that they didn't do anything this blatant, like this insane. They stretched some cases and there were some very unfair and biased prosecutions against Trump. That I don't dispute. But this is like another level. But it actually doesn't matter. It's like if something violates the Constitution and is fundamentally immoral and wrong, you don't get to do it just because they did it first. Like that's toddler level moral logic. He started it. Okay, so you don't get to be evil in response just to bad people, actually. I know the idea of taking the high road is like a foreign concept to President Trump, but it's actually what a moral or upstanding citizen or good president is called upon to do, even to people who've been unfair to them, which I don't deny. James Comey and many others were unfair with the whole Russia collusion story and all that stuff. Anyway, more conservative legal analysts crapping all over this. Here is the free speech expert and Fox News contributor, Jonathan Turley. As one of his longest and most vocal critics, I would frankly prefer to crawl into one of Comey's conversant shells than write this column. However, here we are. This indictment is unconstitutional and will likely not survive constitutional challenge. So there you have it from two esteemed First Amendment scholars and legal analysts in the former case and in the latter case, saying this is bogus, even though they've been so critical of Comey. It has nothing to do with whether you like James Comey or not. It's a First Amendment issue. Can a president try to put someone in jail for First Amendment protected political expression? That's what Trump is trying to do. And it's crazy. It's just indefensible. Here is Republican Congressman Don Bacon explaining why this is so flawed and misguided. Listen to him give his take. See, it's like that's part of why I'm showing this, is to show you that it's not a partisan take. It's not a Democratic only opinion to say like this is a bad thing to do. It's a common sense conservative Republican constitutionalist perspective as well. Here is Don Bacon.
This case against Jim Comey is thin, and that might be an exaggeration there. What do you think of all the time and resources that have been put in to prosecuting the former FBI director?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. I think it's foolish. I don't defend Director Comey for putting that post out. I thought it was foolish in his own right for doing it. He took it off right away. But to prosecute a guy for putting that post out also seems foolish to me. It's overreach. And I think most Americans, we don't like seeing lawfare going after people's opponents. And I think we've seen it not just this administration. We've seen it a few administrations now. And I just think it's not healthy for our country. So I think this will be short-lived. A judge will throw it out. I don't see any jury going to do a guilty thing for a picture like that on their social media.
I do completely agree. I think this laughable prosecution will be laughed out of court eventually. But apparently, like somehow people are pushing for more. They actually want more of this. So the Daily Wire, the correspondent there, also tried to push the Trump administration on whether they're going to prosecute Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, another Democrat, for doing the same thing. Listen to this clip.
Thank you, sir. Mary Margaret with the Daily Wire. Should we expect more indictments of this sort? For example, in 2020, Gretchen Whitmer did a TV hit with 8645 on her desk in the background. Is that the kind of thing you would pursue? And then just really quickly, should Comey expect to face more charges for his role in the Russia collusion investigations?
I'm not going to comment on other investigations involving Mr. Comey. He was indicted in the Eastern District of Virginia. That was dismissed on procedural grounds because of the judge's finding regarding the U.S. attorney. So that case is under appeal. As far as other investigations that are happening, it would not be appropriate or fair for me to comment on that time. As far as other incidents of threats against the President of the United States, those will be investigated. Every case is different. The facts are different. Who makes the threat matters. What the threat says matters. You're right. The question about intent matters, and we have to prove that. That's something that's our job, and that's something that prosecutors will have to do in front of a jury at the right time. But you cannot compare. It's not fair to the American people. It's not fair to the defendant. And it's certainly not fair to the prosecutors to compare, well, if you did it here, why didn't you do it there? Every case is different, but there's one thing that will never be different, which is that you cannot threaten to kill the President of the United States, full stop. All right, thanks a lot, guys.
Good thing no one involved in this conversation did that, because I agree, that's terrible, and you absolutely cannot do that. But it's actually a very reasonable question. I mean, I don't know whether the Daily Wire is egging on, the correspondent here is egging them on to try to go after Gretchen Whitmer, which I think would be equally absurd. But so I found the image that they're referring to. She had a tiny, I don't know what that even is, but like a paperweight of some kind in the background of a TV shot that said 8645. This was back in Trump's first term. Gretchen Whitmer did. And they're suggesting that including those numbers lined up in a row is also a threat. I guess by the logic of James Comey, sure, actually. Since we're just stretching into absurdity, it's actually a fair question. Why not also prosecute Gretchen Whitmer for that? Now, again, it's not a threat. It has a commonly used non-threatening meaning, and that is obviously protected speech. So it would fall apart if they tried to do that. And as far as him saying, oh, you can't compare any situation, you absolutely can, actually. When people say exactly the same thing, and some are prosecuted for it, and some are not, and those prosecutions just so happen to seem to fall along party lines in the case of this next one that he was asked about, the acting attorney general here, about Jack Posobiec, whose tweet we already read, saying 8646. If it's a threat to say 8647, it is a threat to say 8646. Obviously, any logical, rational thinking, nonpartisan person can see that. But they are somehow pretending these cases are totally different. Listen to him, to the acting attorney general here when he was asked about that inconsistency.
Let's do a compare and contrast, Mr. Blanche. In 2022, someone well known in right-wing circles, Jack Posobiec, posted on X 8646. He did not take it down. He did not apologize. Mr. Comey has done both of those things. The Biden Justice Department never prosecuted him. By the standard of that grand jury, Jack Posobiec should face charges as well. Will the Justice Department pursue that case? Because they sound very similar.
That's just completely not true. That's not how a grand jury does its work. They don't just look at a single image and then say, okay, yes, we'll indict, or okay, no, we won't indict. They do an investigation. This conduct took place in May of last year, May 15th. It has been almost a year. I assure you, the FBI, the Secret Service, and the U.S. Attorney's Office have not been sitting around doing nothing. They have been investigating.
I'm sorry, what are you spending a year investigating about an Instagram post of some seashells? There's nothing else in the indictment. They literally just cite the Instagram post. There's no other evidence listed. Maybe they showed something to the grand jury we don't know about. But why wouldn't you lead with that? If there's some smoking gun that you have, I don't know why you wouldn't want to be upfront about that. And what's more, it's obviously we can only judge the statement and the case based on the publicly available information. And trust me, bro, it's not going to fly when you're talking about prosecuting your political opponents for what is on its face totally protected free speech. You actually do have to show your work. You don't get to pull a trust me, bro, and say, I promise we've been finding more stuff. I mean, it's going to get laughed out of court. And I highly doubt, I guess I can't say this for sure, that they have been spending the last year also investigating Jack Posobiec for the same offense. If they have, I will admit that I'm wrong. But don't hold your breath, waiting on them to apply. Justice is supposed to be blind, right? Like, that's why the image of the woman with the scales that's so iconic, that's symbolizing the American system of law and order and justice, that's why she's wearing a blindfold, right? Because it's not supposed to matter who you are or what side you belong to. But, I mean, the Trump administration is just totally dispensing with that pretense and openly applying double standards in this way. And free speech warriors on the right, Daily Wire, conservative media stars, many of them are clapping along like seals. And I'm sorry, but if you have double standards, you do not have any standards at all. That's my take on this whole situation. But you guys will have to let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure you're subscribed if you aren't yet. Hit the like button and all of that. Do consider becoming a channel member as well to support my work and support my content. And that'll be it for today's episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk again real soon.